You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
Welcome to Mission Log Engage, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast adjacent. I'm John Champion.
And I'm adjacent to John Champion. I'm Norman Lau.
That's where I like to keep you, Norman, is John
That's right.
Champion adjacent, you know.
I would love to be adjacent to you, like right now. Then I wouldn't be in Florida and I'd be in California with you.
Well, that'd be cool. And we'd probably sip a cocktail while we're doing this. But see, I feel like you're my backup, like if the comments get too heavy and I get too reactionary, then you're just gonna be like, no, let's take this calmly and carefully, consider the point of view of somebody else.
Or maybe just like, here's the heavy weapons.
It'll be exactly. That's why we're a good team. Hey, so welcome back, everybody. You know what we do here. This is the show that we designed for YouTube and for our listeners and followers, so you can watch us respond to your feedback in this unedited and unexpurgated discussion. And it's cool. I like how this has spawned its own little discussion where we got it out there and then people comment on those, and then we'll get a little feedback on those. We like to keep these kind of short and light, easy to digest. So thank you for everybody who's been watching. Norman, where do they find us, by the way?
Well, you can always find us here at Roddenberry Entertainment on YouTube. So please like, share, and subscribe to our playlist here at Mission Log Engage. You can also send your comments to us at missionlog@roddenberry.com if you care to engage with us. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Mission Log Pod. And remember, as always, if we choose to, if they're nice to us, we will engage with your comments on the air, or maybe not so nice.
As we're about to do. So we'll jump right into the first one here. And this is a message from Facebook and taking us to task. Yeah, this is about Vulcans. And and this one calls out both of us. So here we go. And I read. Jay, I assume that's me, then said something bother. Oh, wait, no, I think that
Jay
got
said it's actually
Jay.
Jay.
Yeah. Jay is the sender here. Sorry about that. Something bothered me so much about Norman and John's responses and reactions to the Vulcan segment that I had to pause the podcast. What are you two going on about in terms of, quote, when did Vulcans lose their place of veneration in Star Trek, and did it start with Deep Space Nine, end quote. What? That's all caps right there. Not asking about both of you, but John certainly saw, we know because of the Mission Log reviews, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, with Valeris as a Vulcan conspirator who personally murdered 2 Starfleet security officers as part of a far-reaching plot with Romulan, Klingon, and Federation officers. In Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, we see Sybok, who renounced logic and embraced spirituality and emotionalism, leading him to commit a number of crimes. In TAS, Sofek, Stark, and Sepek viciously taunted young Spock. In TOS and Amok Time, T'Pring cynically using logic manipulated Vulcan custom and Spock to gain clear passage to a relationship with Stonn. In TNG's Gambit, Talera, T'Pau was the leader of a fringe isolationist movement. And how could we omit the number of times Spock himself went off Vulcan book, half human or not? All of these are pre-DS9 episodes or movies, not novels, not headcanon. The problem with the criticism leveled at Chulak and DS9's portrayal is that Trek has a long history of Vulcans who were not being very Vulcan-y. In fact, one might say that Vulcan has quite a history of Vulcan outliers, some criminals, some emotionally compromised, quite possibly due to the rigors of Vulcan logic, which involves a lot of ritualism and intense focus, some of them outright crazy. Side note, even here, the idea that Spock and Sarek are exemplars of completely stoic and logical Vulcan culture is misleading. After all, Spock being a half-human by biology and also his own occasional breaks and his Vulcan side and upbringing, as well as Sarek's seeming or unseeming fascination for / fetishization of human women actually make them outliers. Let me catch my breath. So the fact that Chulak said that he murdered people because logic actually makes sense because Chulak was crazy. It is quite reasonable that there would be at least one psychotic Vulcan out of an entire race, one that does not line up with a literalist interpretation that all Vulcans must be the same because Spock and Sarek were supposedly the epitome of the entire people. Come on now. And that's literally ended that message with "Come on now." All
Yeah.
right, Norman, go to it.
Well, I mean, I appreciate those comments, Jay. I really do, and obviously you feel strongly about it. But instead of doing this expositionally, let's kind of take a look at the email and take a look at the specific examples that Jay is talking about. So we're talking about kind of like the austerity. Am I using that word right? The austerity or the mystic mysticism, kind of like the veneration, as actually Jay uses it, of the Vulcan people, specifically Vulcans in Starfleet. So let's make that distinction: Vulcans in Starfleet. So let's go first with Valeris. Valeris was, yes, she was a traitor. I will completely admit to that, and that is a very specific thing. We also know that Valeris was a last minute replacement for Savick, who was half Romulan, who was probably working for the Romulan ambassador during that whole conspiracy. So there is a little bit of doubt that you can probably place on her character. But yes, absolutely, Valeris did not hold up to that Starfleet tradition of, of being an honorable Vulcan.
Yeah.
Sybok was not Starfleet. So I don't believe that he actually falls into this equation. Sofek, Stark, and Sepik were children. We're not trained. They did not go through Kolonor, and they did not actually, they didn't serve in Starfleet. So that doesn't really apply either. Stan and these are all characters that are Vulcan, but not in Starfleet. We're talking specifically about the Vulcans in Starfleet because Chulak was a Starfleet officer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, for that matter, though, I mean, even if we just say, okay, we're focusing on Vulcans and not just Vulcans in Starfleet, I would still say that up until now, there is mostly this idea, and certainly popularly this idea, that Vulcans are, they do have better control over their emotions because their emotions run so deep. And they are venerated in Star Trek. The ones that we're describing here definitely are the outliers. They are definitely those 1 in a million who, at least to most people that you encounter on screen in Star Trek, are not like the average Vulcan that they know. Right. That said, I am fully ready, willing, and able to give a little ground here and say the most interesting Vulcans are the ones who are not sort of the paint by numbers, stoic, purely logical Vulcans. It's the ones who have a little bit of an edge or a little bit of a crack in that that are more interesting. Like going to Enterprise, which we haven't covered on Mission Log yet, but you and I are fans of that show. And I fully accept what they did in Enterprise by kind of resetting and going like, okay, but what if some of the first ones we meet are not that warm and friendly, by Vulcan standards even.
And there was huge controversy behind those choices, huge controversy. And I get that because, you're basically retconning everything that we're kind of like talking about right now. But for this sake of this argument, Jay says here, Chulak was crazy. That was never really diagnosed, nor do we know that specifically. He did have, he committed a crime. He murdered 3 people. There is a logical conclusion, pardon the pun, that he may have suffered some type of psychotic break, but that's the point that we never got to.
Yeah.
And we had an actual therapist on board that chose to hold a rifle over him instead of try and actually counsel him and try and understand that. And we spent more time on that and trying to figure out, the relationship between, Dax and her, her Hannibal Lecter symbiote, memory, instead of trying to figure out or diagnose who this Vulcan was and why he had this problem.
That is oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go. No.
I would say that is the single biggest frustration here is that you take an episode like Sarek from Next Gen and you go, this is actually really fascinating because it is this person who sees himself and wants everybody else in the world to see him as this paragon of logic and thoughtfulness, et cetera, but he's losing his mind. And that was the interesting part of the story, is how he deals with it, how the people around him deal with it. The most interesting idea in this story is a Vulcan serial killer. And by using the word logic in the end, that's where I think we're coming to not a meeting of minds here with Jay's email, is that to me and Norman, sorry if I'm speaking for you, Norman, that felt like a blow off of the script. That felt like the shortest possible way to just say, oh, look, he's Vulcan, he said logic. As opposed to actually getting into the motivations, because the motivations honestly felt so weak. So it was too bad. It was, I think I would have had a much better time accepting all of this if we actually followed that story, but we didn't. We did the Nancy Drew mysteries with Ezri.
It was the blowaway line that basically cast away all of the history that we've learned about, like Vulcan stoicism, Vulcan training, culinar discipline, logic. They used it as a soundbite that may have enticed people that knew about Vulcans like us.
Yeah.
And like they just kind of cast it aside. It's a throwaway line. But Jay, I totally see where you're coming from with this. And I think that for the most part, you're right. But I do think that in your examples, we're not getting to the actual apples to apples comparison of who Chulak is versus all of these other Vulcans that don't even serve in Starfleet except for Valeris.
Hey, I want to know if there's a Chulak novel out there. Maybe there is. I don't know. But Jay, thank you so much. And we'll be back every day with more of your questions and our answers or our ruminations. You know where to find us, youtube.com/Roddenberry Entertainment. Follow that Mission Log Engage playlist and send us your comments, missionlog@roddenberry.com. Find us on Twitter and Facebook at Mission Log Pod. And remember, we may engage with your comments on the air.